Hello, Tim. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
We appreciate you joining us in this amazing project, and we are looking forward to hearing your story. So let's begin. Please tell us about yourself. Where were you born and raised?
I was born in South Central LA. I grew up on 88th and Compton Avenue, so I'm a Los Angeles kid through and through.
What was it like for you growing up as a young man in South Central?
Growing up in LA in the 80s was it was a fun time, but it was also a rough time in terms of the gangs were at their height, um, and so you were constantly aware of that. But at the same time, I think we had such a great group of guys that I grew up with on 88th and Compton Avenue. Adrian McCovey, Randy, Mario, Sean, Fred. I mean, we played sports every day. We came home from school, did our homework, and we all met in the park and we played sport. And whatever sport was in season, that was a sport we were playing: baseball, basketball, football, and we just had an amazing camaraderie. And so that that's something that is sorely missed, kind of growing up today. And so, but at the same time, with the gangs and drugs, my mother was really instrumental. I have a older brother that went to Fremont, older sister that went to Fremont, another older sister that didn't go to Fremont. But so she really set the tone for us and making sure that education was going to be our way out. So she was, no matter what, she was always focusing on making sure that our grades and that we were focused on we were graduating from college, not just attending, but graduating from college. So from a very young age, that's all my mother talked about, is making sure that we went and got an education. So.
And that was going to be my next question is, because it was such a difficult time in our community when we were attending Fremont with gang violence and shootings and losing so many of our friends. Who inspired you? And it sounds like your mom was your big motivator and your inspiration. Was there other people in your life that motivate you as a child?
Yeah, there was several. Obviously my mother, hardworking individual, and so instilling, never finished beyond the eighth grade, but always made sure that we focused on education and that being our way out. But my brother is still, to this day, one of my biggest heroes. He set the mark that we all strive to get to. And so my brother was in all my coaches from the time I played Pee Wee football, having those men in my life at that time, 8, 9 years old, to have, those coaches in my life, and then go to have not only coaches, but teachers. Once I got to junior high school, Mr. Smith, he was the first Steve Harvey. Mr. Smith wore a suit and tie every single day, and he's the only teacher that all four of us has taken, which is remarkable. And then I get to high school, and I had amazing coaches: Coach Sullivan, Coach Young, Coach Houston. The assistant coaches, former teammates, and so all of those guys were very inspirational to me. The guys that played before me, Darren Daphne and George McGlynn, and all of those guys from the 88 team that I watched as a ninth grader, and wanted to emulate those guys and get to where they were when they were playing at the sports arena. And so all those guys inspired me. Darren Daphne going on to UCLA, at that time, before we stepped foot onto Fremont's campus, was a big inspiration to us, to me personally. And like I said, my brother, he went on from Fremont to play football at Nebraska on a football scholarship. So, you know,
Wow,
yeah.
that's amazing. You had many individuals in your life that motivated you and pushed you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then all the guys in the neighborhood, they knew my mother didn't play, and so I had the local drug dealer, the local gang banger, the OGs. They made sure they looked out for me in terms of making sure if the block was going to be hot this weekend, they say, hey man, you might not want to be around here, things like that, and they took up for me, because I love my brother. We loved Nebraska prior to him going there and growing up in the Crip neighborhood. It was blasphemy to wear, anything with a shade of red in it. And so, hey, come Saturday, Nebraska was playing. I had my hat, I had my jersey on, I had something to represent my brother and those guys. They let me slide. They gave me a pass on that, and
Wow.
but they also looked out for me. And from playing with those guys when I got to high school, it was nothing, because I played with grown men and them beating up on me, and in a way that just made me tough, and not
Right.
not to beat me down, but to make me tougher. And so by the time I got to high school, playing with guys like Slim and I can't even think some of these other guys' names, but I can see their faces, and that they were inspirational because they told me what not to do. They had traveled the road, and so they knew we were destined for the things beyond the neighborhood. So they made sure that they led us in the right direction.
That's wonderful. And my next question to you was going to be, how did you cope with the stress and the struggles of our community? But you had so many amazing people to help you through it.
Yeah, I think we really didn't see it as stress and a struggle, right? So,
Right.
you had the cards that you were dealt, and you just played your hand,
Right.
and so, again, like being able to have guys in my neighborhood that but once we got to kind of, I moved over in that neighborhood 8, 9 years old, and by the, we all went our separate ways once we got to high school, because we primarily all went to the same junior high school, Charles Drew. But by the time it came to go to make choices for high school, some of the guys were older than I was, Randy and Mario and Adrian. And so those guys, we kind of went our separate ways. Torn passed away. But I mean, we really didn't see it as a struggle. I mean, we rode our bikes. I mean, we had so much fun outside, in between all the madness, and you just knew where to go, when to do. Your sense of common sense was just so sharp. You knew not where not to go. You knew where to quicken your pace if you were in some neighborhood that you wasn't familiar with. You knew how to be aware of your surroundings, and so it really sharpened a lot of other things as opposed to being a stress, and kind of being having anxiety about it. We just
Right.
used to strengthen us.
Yeah, it prepared you.
Yeah, I mean, because dealing with those type of things, it really just prepared me for anything. Like I could deal with anything. I
Wow.
mean, you could be at the park having a great time, and all of a sudden, a fight break out and this melee, and and somebody starts shooting. But one of those things is you knew the signs. You knew okay, those two guys are starting to get loud. Let me gather up my things and and move on. But it really wasn't a
Wow.
stretch. We never really looked at it like that.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Please share with us a little bit more about your high school years.
High school set the stage for everything. I think it was a huge. It really wasn't a big choice. I mean, I knew I was going to go to Fremont. It was the neighborhood school. I had guys that I grew up that I went to junior high school with that were being highly recruited, and that was being highly recruited at that time was a few coaches coming in and asking you to go play on their team versus going to your local high school. Guys like Mark Thomas and Deshaun Johnson and so those guys and Adrian and before us and a couple other guys I can't think of right now. So those guys, they were really highly thought of, and I was a late bloomer. So I knew I was going to Fremont, and one of the things that really set the tone for me was Coach Young had always been affiliated with Nike some way, shape, or form, and his roots go way back. I've actually had the opportunity to sit down and talk to the godfather of ground rules basketball, Sonny Vaccaro, and to drop Coach Young's name and for him to tell some stories about Coach Young, but to stay on task. So prior to after graduation for ninth grade, Fremont, Coach Young had a team, an AAU team, Slam and Jam at the time. And so he was pulling all the talent all from all around the city that they was trying to get to come to Fremont. And I caught wind of it, and I just started showing up. I wasn't invited, I wasn't that talented, but I just showed up. And I said, I'm gonna keep showing up to practice until they tell me not to show up. And sure enough, the guys started falling off, and they couldn't take. Coach Young was he made Bobby Knight look like a nun. The way he was on guys and fussing and cussing at guys, but that was nothing for me. So he could do whatever he wanted to do as long as he didn't tell me not to come. That was probably been the most upsetting and thing that probably would have made me break down if he told me to stop coming to practice. I ended up making this Team LA, and we went to play in a tournament in Vegas. First time being in Vegas, and it was a great experience. And we we stayed in a small hotel near the airport called the Mini Price Motor Inn, and I'll never forget it to this day.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah, and it was so far. And I realizing now it was so far away from the Strip, and we used to walk. It was almost by the airport, and we walked all the way from that hotel to Circus Circus, which at that time was the opposite end of the Strip, and that was the only place that kids could go at that time. And so we played. We end up we lost our first game, but we end up winning the Constellation Championship. And from there, a lot of those guys came to Fremont. Mike Tate played on that team. Chris Ford played on that team. Trying to think of who else. A couple other guys. I can't remember their name. Deron and Pup. I can't remember their real names. They were already at Fremont. Lionel Pandy. So we had a great time. Yeah, and so so that parlayed into coming to Fremont. I played JVs as a 10th grader, and relished that opportunity. And we practiced about 4 or 5 hours a day, and tough practices. Like I talked to Coach Sullivan, and he's like, as the years went on, like they couldn't be as tough as they were when we were around. We used to have to run, mile under 6 minutes. We used to have to run the bleachers. We used to run suicides. And for the first month or two of the season, we didn't even see basketballs. We ran. Like we just got in shape because we were going to be in much better shape than the other team. Had a really good, we had a good JV season. And then after the season was over, got moved up to varsity. Me and Lindsey Dunbar, and then we enjoyed that '89 team. You had guys like Tyrone Phillips, Maurice McKenzie, God rest his soul. You had Terrell Barber, Adrian was on that team, and we made a run. We won the city championship that year in '89. We finished like 28-4 as a varsity team. And then our season ended in double overtime against Manual Arts. I never forget it. A guy hit Marcel Capers hit a shot to win the game in double overtime. So coming back, that just led to us wanting to be champs again and get back and get to the state championship. We finished the next season 29-3, but we lost in the city championship that year to North Hollywood, and then we come back as seniors, myself and Mike Tate and Robert Moore, Quincy Guy, and we won. We started the season off ranked nationally, number 8 in the nation in U.S. Today. We went on a huge run. We won city championship. We won Southern regionals. And then we lost in Vegas against a team from Mercer Island, Washington. That was our first loss of the year. And then we didn't lose another game until the state championship. So from Christmas to March, we didn't lose another game. And then we end up getting to and losing the state championship to Jason Kidd, which ironically, I had an opportunity to meet a few years ago, and we've been, we stay in touch ever since. And so, David Fisdale played on that team, Chris Ford, Mike Tate, Robert Moore, Todd Whitehead, Tyrone Holliness, Lamont Conway, all those guys. So we had some great, some of our best games were at practice. Yeah, we definitely. So I talk about basketball, and I even played football in my senior year as well. So I played like the last 6 or 7 games my senior year playing football. But
Wow.
all of that prepared me for college. All that prepared me for life after college. A lot of the things that we did in practice in terms of preparation, making sure that we attention to detail, something that that follows me today as an accountant, as a business person, entrepreneur, all of those different things, leadership skills, teamwork, all of those things were learned in between the lines in that gym at Fremont. So what I owe any kind of what anybody would consider success is 50-50 between what I learned playing basketball at Fremont and from my mother and siblings.
Wow, that's really amazing. Thank you. I was going to ask you, what are your best memories from high school, and you shared them, but is there one in particular that really stands out for you while you were playing basketball or football?
Yeah, and I'd be remiss if I didn't mention some of the great teachers too. I never forget Mr. Niebergolf, one of my favorite math teachers, Miss White, English teacher. I can't remember the science teacher's name, but I think favorite memory. I think this for me was I longed for this day. We lost the city championship in '90 to North Hollywood, and that was one of the bitterest losses ever, because we felt like we could have went on to win the state championship that year. We had a really great team, and so that and coming back the next year, like we passed up an opportunity to go play out of state at a tournament to schedule North Hollywood at North Hollywood. And so we went out there and we beat the brakes off them kids. We beat them bad. and in their own gym. And so that was a sweet, bittersweet moment, because it was like, if uh, we wanted to play that team, like if that game had ended and they said, "Hey, can we run it right back?" We probably would have beat them on 50. But they were the better team that day. But and then so the goal to be able to play them in their gym in front of their fans. I mean, even everybody was pumped up. I mean, the gym was packed. Our cheerleaders was pumped. I mean, everybody was pumped for that game. And so that was one of my best memories. And we held them to like 7 points at halftime, or no, it's like through the through the first 2 quarters. And so we played so hard that there's all these pictures, and everybody's wondering like, "Hey, you must have didn't play," but because the game was won at halftime. So all the pictures that everybody has of that game, everybody has on their warm-ups, because we had beat them so bad, we were sitting on the sidelines with our warm-ups on, and guys that had came up from JV, Ty Drummer, Leslie, I can't think of some of the other kids' names. Those guys were out there playing. I don't remember any of the game past halftime, because we were so far ahead, and we still end up winning the game by like 33 points. It's still one of the largest margins of victory
Wow.
in a city championship game to this day. But that that was one of another sweet moment. But there were so many, um,
Yes.
and a lot of it, didn't happen, when the lights were turned on. Just the camaraderie, and with the guys that you practice with, Antoine Dent. I'm just throwing out some names as I remember them. Troy Bigelow. Um, we like I said, some of my most memorable moments and some of the toughest things were in practice, because we battled each other.
What a beautiful strength that you had in friendships through, through your experience in sports and in your community. It's pretty amazing. And you touched on something that's really important, and I wanted to ask that question for our youth out there playing sports, is how do you handle a loss? Right? We feel great when we win, but how do you tell a young, a young person playing sports who lost a big game? How do you, yeah, what advice can you give them to bring them out of that and do what all of you did, is you came back and you beat that team?
Yeah.
Yeah.
For us, I mean, for me, and what I've learned, like, so through 3 years of high school, we only lost 9 games. So,
Very
you know,
few.
right. So it was very few times that we ever lost
Very
a game.
few.
Right? So, but I can remember we lost to University High and LA High, and then we had to end up playing both of those teams. I think we had to play University High to get to the city championship, and then we played LA High for the city championship in '89. But I think what we did, and what I tell anybody is that is for dealing with loss or dealing with disappointment is not about the actual thing that you lost or that you're disappointed about. It's how you're going to respond to that loss. And so what I learned, like, we worked harder, right? We
Right.
analyzed the loss. We watched the film, and we saw where we didn't do certain things, and we came back and we worked harder. And so that's how, I learned how to respond to any kind of adversity or loss, is that, you come back and you work harder,
Right.
because I'm not going to let the same team beat me the next time. I'm not going to let the same circumstances or the same test or the same course or anything. I'm going to recognize my weaknesses, and that's what I'm going to work on so that I can um, deal with it the next time from a point of strength. And so that's what I would tell anybody. When you lose, it's only that moment. So be in that moment, but don't stay in it. And so I
Right.
think that's really what we learned, because we knew there was there was the next time. And so, you know, the only loss that stayed with me for a very, very long time was the last game of my high school career was the state championship. I mean, because there was no next game, right? There was no
Right.
next. We wasn't going to be able to play them again, things of that sort. So that one really uh, was a tough loss to deal with. But at the same time, it helped to shape and motivate me to be, you know, better, to move on from it, and to say, you know what, I mean, and to reflect, right? Because at that point in time, it was like, you know, we had a great year, we had a great season, we had a great career, but you know, I didn't dwell in the the agony of defeat. I didn't dwell on it. I took that and tried to build on it.
Thank you for sharing that. What advice would you give to students navigating school and sports?
Use it to fuel you, right? Because all of the things that you learn from one, you can apply to the other: teamwork, leadership, you know, and so for us, I mean, we didn't have a lot of distractions outside of school, right? So
Mm.
uh, you know, if you were on the straight and narrow, right, you know, there wasn't a whole lot of things that really distracted your time, that were productive, that you could that was an alternative. So for me, it allowed me to really focus and hone all of my energy, all of my whatever I wanted to do. It just really allowed me to just kind of better time management skills, because you know I didn't have a lot of free time, right? So I was able to manage my time a lot better, and that followed me into college, into corporate America, and so I think you use what you're learning and you leverage it, because um, they go hand in hand, right? So the
Right.
more you study and the more you focus and the more you are in tune with your studies, then it helps you to be focused and in tune. And when you're out playing whatever sports you're playing, and so they kind of really leverage and kind of counter each other, because you know they work hand in hand. I mean, right now I can't even imagine. You know, like with my nieces and you know, they're not playing sports. So I'm like, you guys should have straight A's. You should be like, because you don't have nothing else to, you know, like, but they have all these other things competing for their time, social media and
Right.
all, like, you know, but for me, it was just a part of being a teenager. You know, it was, I can't really imagine like going through high school and not having both. You know, I was a decent student. I probably would have been a better student had I, you know, known what I know now. But you know, B average, was much more capable than the grades I produced. But you know, you went it, you did your school all day, and then for us, 6 period PE mean that you played on the team. So you started practice at 2:30. We didn't end till like 6:30, 7 o'clock most nights. And then you went home,
Wow.
you ate dinner, and you did your homework, and you did it all over again. And that's what you look forward to.
Wow. Wow. Let's talk about your path to higher education and how did you cope with the distance from living in South Central to going to Alabama State University?
That was an easy transition. And the funny story is, I mean, I settled on Alabama State, but I was supposed to go to many of different schools, you know. And so once I get to, you know, Alabama, um, it was it was kind of, you could let your guard down. There was a lot of things that you just didn't do, that I was able to do in Alabama, right? So You walk down the street, Southern hospitality thing. So everybody's speaking, everybody is much more hospitable, right? And there was, something as simple as being out uh, late at night and looking up and seeing the stars. Like it was something that I
Wow.
never did in LA, right? I never
Right.
was out that late and was just,
No.
where I could just be somewhere and I was like, oh, look at all the stars. Like it just never happened. And so I get to Alabama and I'm hanging out and it's like, 10, 11 o'clock at night and you look up and it's like, what is that? And it's like stars. Like, what do you mean? What is that? Experiencing different seasons. That was something that was, I had never experienced fall and spring, right? So, I go to school, it's August, September, it's fall. The one thing that is hilarious to me, and I tell the story. So there was a tree that I used to pass by going to one of my classes, and the tree had all these green leaves on it, beautiful tree. And then all of a sudden, all the leaves on the tree turned, yeah, yellow. And I was like, something wrong with this tree. Like, why are the leaves turning colors? It turned all yellow. And so I
Wow.
took it to the tree. You come back a couple of weeks later, and all the leaves was off the tree. And I was like, oh my God, the tree is dying. And so this uh, girl was like, what do you mean? I was like, what's wrong with this tree? Like all the leaves have fallen off the tree. And she was like, where are you from? And I'm like, LA. And she was like, go figure. And then like, it's called fall, autumn. It was like all the leaves fall off and that's why they call it fall. And I was like, oh, okay. But to experience fall for the first time, like, or being somewhere where, fall actually happened. But yeah, it was an easy transition. I think, and then come back in the spring and you see things budding. Like what? Like that was an amazing thing for me. So,
Amazing
but yeah,
experience.
it was an easy transition. And then
Wow.
just the thought of being around other like-minded individuals, you didn't have to worry about, what colors you was wearing. You didn't have to worry about, being in the wrong neighborhood, and obviously, there was, um, but there was things that were going on, but just to a much smaller scale, right? People got shot, but it wasn't every day, right?
Right.
It wasn't, we had fights, but it was like, okay, once you broke it up, you didn't fear that nobody was coming back to shoot up the club, if we went to the club, things like that, so it was much easier to deal with a slower pace of life, less violence, right? So, and one of the things that was funny to me, um, so there was like 3 or 4 hospitals in Montgomery, Alabama, and they used to rotate which one would have the emergency room, and they would make that announcement on the radio like throughout the day. They would say, "Oh, Jackson Hospital has the emergency room this week," and it'll be like, "What? Like everybody don't have an emergency room?" Like, and, but
Right.
that was how few violence there was, that every hospital didn't have an emergency room. So that just goes to show you.
Yeah. Wow. What an amazing experience for you.
Yeah,
It's so different than what we were used to in LA. What?
much different.
Yeah, very different. And we don't, a lot of people don't realize that when you live in South Central, for everyone who hasn't experienced where we come from, like there's so many things that we haven't been exposed to.
Right.
It's really,
Snow.
yeah,
even even though
yeah,
it's not that far away in California, I experienced my first experience in snow was in Alabama. So it was like it was an
wow.
amazing thing to do all of these different things that I would never have done. I mean, just laying out,
Right,
you know, 10, 11 o'clock at night and looking up at the stars, like something I had never did. Like,
right. No, I totally understand because I remember my first experience as well, just looking up at the stars. Because most of the time we were listening to helicopters, you know.
Right, right. We had a different type of star.
Yeah, we had yeah, that was our star, was the
The ghetto bird with that flashing light. That was the North Star.
helicopter. Oh man. Yeah. Well, let me ask you this next question. What led you to the field of accounting and finance? How did you find that? What motivated you into that field?
It's a funny thing. I started out. I had so many different majors. I had no idea what I wanted to do when I went to college, and I think my first major I wanted to be in. I wanted to go into public relations. Like that just sounded good. I had no idea what public relations was, and so I had a public speaking class, and I was like, yeah, I don't think this is for me. And so the one great thing about historically black college, the enrollments are usually pretty small, so classes are pretty intimate. You know your professors, they know you, and so what ended up happening was I took a so I'll go through the different. So I went from public relations to I was like one of my aunts that lived in Alabama would always tell me this story about her arthritis and how I should be a doctor so I could find a cure for arthritis and all of this. So I started a funny story. So I changed my major. I'm like, I'm focused. I'm gonna be a doctor. And so I would go to biology class and sit somewhere, and then so now that I changed my major, I'm serious about biology. So I went and sat in the front row, and I pulled my book out. I got my notepad. I got my pen, and when I woke up, I asked. I said, "Excuse me, professor." I said, "When's the next test?" And he said, "Next Tuesday." And I gathered my stuff up. I said, "I'll see you next Tuesday." And that was my week of having biology as my major. And so and then I latched on to marketing. And so I'm like, oh yeah, I'm gonna be marketing. We saw Boomerang, and everybody wanted to be Marcus, and do all of these ads and things like that, and be in advertising. And so that was the last thing. And so the great thing about the College of Business at Alabama State, which was led by the great Dean Vaughn, was the curriculum was designed that you would have to take a lot of courses in the other disciplines. And so I end up having to take you had to take like 2 or 3 accounting classes, 2 or 3 finance classes, 2 or 3 management classes, 2 or 3 marketing classes. And so into like my second accounting class, I had a professor, Mr. Kingsley, little guy he was from Nigeria, and he had all these different side hustles. And so I was just in his office one day, he called me into his office and he said, "What's your major, young man?" And I said, "It's marketing." And he said, "Marketing." He said, "What do you want to do in marketing?" I said, "Oh, I want to be in advertising and do." And he was like, "Okay." And he said, "Have you ever considered accounting as a major?" And I was like, "Accounting? Like, nah, nope." And he said, "I'll tell you this, and then you make your own mind up." He said, "Accounting is the only profession at the time that you could graduate, take a test, and you would be a professional, right? Similar to a doctor, similar to a lawyer, similar to a dentist that had to go to additional years of schooling to be a part of that profession." And he was like, "This is the only profession that you could graduate an undergrad degree at the time. You have to have a master's degree now, and take the exam, and then you're part of the profession." So that really weighed on me. And then I end up switching my major to accounting, and I end up having great professors, and that's really and then I just had a love of it. The more that I got into it, and really, Dr. Crawford and uh, was really one of my best professors that I had, and so she really taught it. And she had an amazing story. Her husband was like a civil rights attorney. She had like 3 or 4 kids, raised all of them. They got grown, and like in her mid 40s, she went back to school and then, became a professor, and was tough as nails. And from having professors like her, Mr. Bates, Dean Vaughn, Dr. Sell, I mean, they they were on you like they were your parents. Especially when they knew you had potential. You show any signs of being able to be something better than what you were presenting, they pulled it out.
Wow.
And that was and it served me well. I think I took the exam before I graduated. Didn't pass that first time, but then took it the second time and passed all parts. At that time, it was you had to take all 4 parts at the same time. It was a 2-day test. It was pencil and paper, and like it was rough, right?
Yeah, sounds intense.
It is, but now it's like so easy. I mean, I can't um, have any sympathy for anybody today, like because you can take one part at a time. You can do it on the computer.
Wow, it's changed.
Yeah, times have changed. Times have changed, and I've actually um, it, the when I took it, I was the last class of individuals before they changed to that you have to have 150 credit hours, which is basically they have to have a master's degree to take the exam. So that's how long ago it's been. So, and I still keep my license to this day, and I still keep it current.
What motivated you to pursue a master's degree?
My brother and sister had pursued master's degree. It was something I always wanted to do. I always wanted an MBA. Even talking, like I said, with the great professors that I had, they all one of the great things about the College of Business was Dean Vaughn didn't settle. Being a historically black college is usually hard to attract some of the top, talent in terms of professors. All of our professors had doctor's degrees, and I mean, I can only think of like 2 professors in the College of Business that didn't have the doctor's degree. But there was always, as we was going through college, and especially once I got to in my major in College of Business, is always talking about having that next leg up, that next advantage. So if you were in accounting or you're in a business field, having a graduate degree, having your CPA exam, having some kind of designation behind your name would always give you a competitive advantage. It would level the playing field, right?
Right.
Because there's a lot of opportunities that is not going to present themselves to me, but I I get in the room because I have all of the credentials, right? I have a bachelor's degree, I have a MBA, I have a CPA, and I may get in the room and some of the folks don't have half of what we have, but I needed to have that as an African American male to get into the room. And then so that was always the motivating factor, is that you always want to have that competitive advantage and have the things that'll get you a seat at the table.
Yes, I agree. I agree. What advice would you give to first-time generation college students?
Um, I think it's don't focus on being the first one, right? Or if
Right.
you focus on being the first one, then bust down the door, right? Like my brother was the first one to graduate, probably, and for us, and so he did it with flair, right? He bust down a lot of doors that made it look easy that I could walk down that path, right?
Right.
So what I don't like, and what I see a lot of folks of, is making a big deal out of that you're the first ones, and trying to if the road is rough, make it easier for the one behind you. So that's what advice I would give is if you're gonna be the trailblazer, blaze the trail, set it on fire, right? Leave your mark, right? Don't barely struggle to get through and, do all those things, because if you're leading the way, lead the way, carry the torch, carry it high, carry it proudly. But in anything, you'll continue to be the first, right?
Right.
As you continue to go on, like you be the first one to work in corporate America, you be the first one to get a master's degree, you be the first ones to get a doctorate degree, but continue blazing your trail. And don't look behind you, because it's a saying, only a fool trips over something that's behind them, right? So keep your eye. And one of the things that was told to me that is one of the best things to think about is a hurdle, right? I've never ran hurdles, but and I never ran track either. But anybody that has run the hurdles, if you watch somebody run the hurdles, if you look at a hurdler, they never look down at the hurdle. Their eye is fixed on the finish line. They know exactly how many hurdles it is between the start and the finish line. They know exactly how many steps it is between each hurdle. And they just got to execute. They get out the blocks. They know they need to take so many steps and get over the hurdle. So many steps, get over the next hurdle. So many steps, get over the next hurdle. Because they already know that there's going to be hurdles. And so that's what I would tell anybody. There are going to be hurdles in between you and whatever you're trying to get to, which is that finish line. But if you keep your eye on the finish line, then you're not going to be worried about the hurdles in between. You're going to be worried about the finish line. And so that's, whether you're the first, second, third, or whoever, just keep your eye on the finish line and know that the hurdle is going to be there between now and crossing that line.
Thank you for sharing that. A lot of our youth need to hear those words. Thank you. Please share with us about your career path.
My career path, it didn't start out like I wanted it to, but it's not where you start, it's where you finish, and I'm still trying to finish. So I graduated from Alabama State, and I didn't want to stay in Alabama. I didn't want to stay in the South, and so a lot of opportunity that was on the table was obviously, was more readily available to me there, in Alabama, Georgia, Florida, and those places like that. And then some opportunities that we were blessed to not even be that were blessings in disguise that we didn't take advantage of, in terms of, going to places where things really, really didn't turn out well. So I packed up my, I had right before graduation, or before I finished the semester, I had bought a GMC Jimmy. I love my GMC Jimmy. It could have been a Ferrari for all intents and purposes. It was the first car I pulled off the lot. So fond memories of that car. And so I drove that car. It wasn't a brand new car. It was like a 1986. So I was about 10 years old. So I packed up all of my things and I drove by myself from Alabama back to LA. And so I get back to LA. I finished in December. So I get back to LA, I reconnect with a few of my boys, Tyrone Hollinas and I, and a few guys that he knew, used to hang out all the time. So they used to go, I don't know what they did in the daytime, but I went literally knocking door to door with my resume, trying to find a job. And at that time, faxing your resume, actually getting the newspaper and looking through the newspaper ads and responding to ads. That's how far back this goes. And my buddy Adrian McCovey used to one of his cousins or somebody had an office with a fax machine, so he was gracious enough to fax out a ton of my resumes for jobs, and it was rough. Like I literally had to come back and like pound the pavement, literally, And so finally, I got my first job with First AME Church. And probably to this day, it's still one of the toughest interviews I've ever had. And it was just for a staff accountant position. But this was after I had interviewed with Price Waterhouse, and I can't stand Price Waterhouse to this day because interviewed with them several times in several different places, and so to back up, I interviewed with Price Waterhouse at this at this conference, National Association of Black Accountants conference in like October, and so November. I get a call from the head of recruiting. She was in New York, out in New York, and she was like, "Yeah, you really interviewed well. There's we're going to find a spot for you because at that time, Price Waterhouse hired in every city about 200 to 300 graduates, like at every office, and so the lady was I can't remember her name, but she was in HR, and she said, yeah, just I'll get back with you after Christmas, and then I'll tell you, and you tell me your top 10 cities or top 5 cities that you will want to consider. And so I went home thinking that I had a job at
Right.
Price Waterhouse. So after the holidays, January 2nd, I'm calling like, hey, getting nothing but voicemails. A week go by, 2 weeks go by. And and finally someone answers, calls me back and said that lady had went on maternity leave. And and so like everybody that she had talked to, like basically was back at square one.
Oh no.
And and so I'm like, my heart just dropped because I go from, I'm like, thinking I got this great job at Price Waterhouse, which at that time was one of the top 5 or the big 6 at that time accounting firms. So I'm like, I'm golden, and to go from that to like, okay, now you got to figure this thing out. So I make some calls, and a good friend of mine that graduated a year before I did, William Cossey, he was working for Price Waterhouse in Denver, and so he called another Alabama State graduate that was working in LA for Price Waterhouse, and so they ended up getting me an interview. And so I got the interview, go downtown, I put on my best suit, and they interviewed you all day during those times. Like you went in at 8 o'clock and you left at like 3:30, 4 o'clock. And they take you to lunch, all these different things. And so I leave there and I'm like, okay. And then they start telling you the salary, and I'm like, okay, I must have the job. And at that time it was like the starting salary was like $36,000. So I'm like, oh my, I'm just thinking about all the things I'm gonna do, and so 1995, 96, $36,000 is a lot of money. And so I just had all these things planned out in my mind, and I never get a call back, never get a call, never get a call. And so finally, I at this, I still was interviewing with other companies and wherever I could find an interview, still pounding the pavement. And then I ended up landing the job with First AME Church. And I was a staff accountant there for a couple of years. And then I just kept, constantly looking for new opportunities. So I went from First AME Church to Romero in Boston. Romero in Boston was the auditors for the First AME Church and a couple of other nonprofit agencies in the city. They were based in Chino, so I end up moving on to them because I had passed the CPA exam, and so I needed to get CPA experience to get my license. So I worked for them for a couple of years. Then I moved on to Ingram Micro, Santa Ana, as an internal auditor, and worked there for 2 or 3 years. Loved that. Was able to travel internationally. Got to go to some great places. because of Ingram Micro, and it was grueling because I traveled like 75% of the time. Learned a lot there, and then moved to Chicago to work for Kellogg in internal audit. And then from Kellogg, I was Kellogg had a really good professional development. So they look for you to change jobs every 18 to 24 months. So I went from a senior internal auditor, and I left as a manager of planning and reporting. Went from from Kellogg to Case New Holland. I was a manager of financial planning and reporting there. Then kind of took a break from corporate America. Went to work at a high school, taught entrepreneurship and business math at a high school here in Chicago. And then I realized I'm not a teacher. And so I went back to work in accounting, was the assistant city treasurer for the city of Chicago for about 4 years. Then I left there to be the comptroller for the Cook County Forest Preserve. And then my current position came calling, the Illinois Housing Development Authority. So I'm the controller there. And I've been there for about 3 years. And so, just constantly trying to, learn and grow and just be the best. They say if you bloom where you're planted, you'll grow where you want to go. So wherever you're at, I just try to be the best that I am where I'm at and not worry about where I'm trying to get to, because if I do everything where I'm at, because my last 3 jobs all came from referrals, from me being referred to the position. So
that's impressive. What are you most proud of?
Oh, what am I most proud of? It's a tough question. I'm most proud of the things I've done to pour into other people. I think, I really thought that, I was going to be, this, I planned on being the CEO of a Fortune 500 company, and had these high aspirations, and I never saw myself as successful or having achieved anything because I had these lofty goals and I never got to any of them. But what's been one of the things that I'm most proud of is pouring back into other people and see them grow. And so, whether it's individuals that have worked for me, whether it's, I've coached, whether it's seeing former players, appreciate some of the small things that you did for them. Those are some of the things I'm really proud of. I'm proud of, of my nieces and nephews when they talk about some of the things that that you said to them that motivated them. And I think I would say one of my proudest moments was my oldest nephew. When he walked off the stage, he came to me after he graduated from college, and he said, I get it. And because, my brother and I was really tough on him, and for him to come and say, hey, now that he's gotten across that finish line, to acknowledge that all the things that we were saying to him and doing for him, that he got it. So that was a really proud moment.
Powerful. What legacy do you want to leave behind? How do you want to be remembered by?
Still working on that. I think one of the things that I don't think I don't think I'll shape that narrative. I think it'll be shaped by the people that I influence the most. And I think what I'm trying to do is to be an example of hard work, dedication, drive, and that you don't have to be the leader of the pack. You don't have to be in the spotlight. You don't have to be what everybody else's ideal of success is to be successful. And I think so. I'm not sure what my legacy will be, but I think I work hard trying um, to make my mother proud, to make my brothers and sisters proud, to make my nephews and nieces proud, to make my cousins and relatives, make them proud of me by what I've done. So I don't know what it's going to be. I don't think I have a signature thing. I have a few businesses that I'm trying to grow, and hopefully they'll be to the point where when I'm willing to step away, I can pass them on. Because one of the things I've been able to learn and see, and I hope really wish I'd have learned it earlier, is that no matter how great of a job you have, you can't pass that on, right? But if
Right.
you go and build something that that's yours, you can pass that on. So, and I think that's what I work hard trying to do. Just trying to try to make my neighborhood proud, trying to make uh, dispel any myths. I'll never forget. I made the national dean's list as a freshman, my first semester, and one of my professors said he couldn't believe that I was from South Central because everything that he saw about a kid from South Central, I wasn't that kid, and so I um, I accepted my award in all black with a Raiders hat on and some Chuck Taylors and some khakis, so they could see, this is who you usually see, but you're gonna see that kid from South Central pick up this National Dean's List award. Um, so just trying to change that narrative, and I'll
Right.
never. He looked at me and um, he was like, "Yeah, that's what I know South Central to be." I didn't know that a kid from South Central could make the national dean's list. So that changed his thought process of how bright someone from South Central could be.
That's
So
right.
legacy. I'm still working on it. I'm still trying to shape and mold that. Hopefully one day I'll have kids of my own, and but if not, I have great nieces and nephews that I think that they've learned something from Uncle Tim that they can pull out and say, and whatever that is, that is what my legacy would be, is what they draw on that I said or done that inspire them to do something greater than what I've done.
Yes. Thank you for sharing that. I read and we read about your volunteer work, and I feel that is so important for our youth to hear how important it is to give back. So, what advice could you give them about volunteering and how important it is to be involved?
Um, I think it's very important, and I think my mother always told me. She said either you give her your time or your money, and when you can't give, but it's more valuable to give your time. And I'll never forget some of the people that showed up that gave us their time. And even now, I can value my coaches at Fremont and other places much more because, you know, these were, you know, these were men in their mid 30s and 40s with families that spent more time with me than probably their own families or the team, not just me personally. And so when you get to the point where it's like when, because time is the one thing that you can't produce of your own. You can't, I can make more money, I can make more success, but I can't make any more time. And so I think showing up and being present is so valuable to people like us, um, when, because it makes it tangible, because I've given, money, but to, for somebody to really see me and say, or anybody, to say, um, I walked your shoes. I walked in the same, in the same path you walked, and to see you is a much more valuable and has much more of a lasting presence. So, and then you have to find something or someone that you can pour into, and then a lot of organizations just need that help, right? But there's so much to be gained by volunteering, whatever it is, and not in looking for something in return, right?
Right.
Not because you got to do service learning hours or whatever they call it, right? But when you choose to spend your most valuable commodity, and for me, that's my time. Like, my business, I've lost 100 and some $1,000s, right? But time is the one thing that is my most valuable commodity. And so when I spend it, I try to spend it wisely. And so that's one of the things and, and it's an investment, right? So when you start to invest your time into what you're volunteering and what you have a passion for, uh, the reward and the return on that time is just exponential.
I agree. Thank you. What advice would you give young men struggling with mental health?
Um, Mental health is it's a, for us. I mean, for me as a you know as an individual, it takes on different shapes and forms, right? Because I think when we were growing up, when somebody said they had mental health issues, then you was thinking about the person on the street that was talking to themselves, and you
Right.
know that was just clearly out of their mind. But for me, we had, um, I had such a strong presence in my brother. I had such a strong presence in my mother. Um, it is really about not staying in whatever moment you're in, because you you don't let those moments beat you, because there's always going to be another. And so if you keep going from moment to moment, that, because and I see it all the time. I mean, it's like when one thing happens and then another thing happens, and then, but to keep them all isolated and just deal with the one thing and not let them keep, like it's a tidal wave, right? So you have to put up your walls on this situation. What can you do that's within your control for that situation? And once you do that, then you go on to the next one and then the next one. But if you never kind of make them all different and try to deal with them differently, because there's certain things that you may have more control over than you think, but when you're thinking about them in terms of 10 different things that you have to do, and it becomes all overwhelming. So I think, for me, the one of the things that really helped me was having a real strong relationship with God, and you know, having, that's in every evolving thing, and so that's where I go to for my strength and restore me, to get through these difficult moments. And so that's what I would recommend, is that, for young Black men, uh, I mean, you're born, if you don't, if you're not the Fresh Prince of Bel Air, right? You're born and you have these obstacles that you have to overcome already, right? So once your start is, everybody's already taken off, right? The gun has already went off, right? You're running this race, and they've already got a head start in terms of other people. But with that, you have a lot more capabilities and talents that can help you make up that gap. And so, but you can't continue. I would say, don't continuously focus on all the things that happen. You just got to line them up and see which ones that that you can do the things that are within your control. So when you focus on the controllables, and I say this all the time, control your controllables. And once you do that, then you start to see, okay, this one thing I can do this, and this. This one thing there's nothing I can do. Move on to the next one. Move on to the next one. And so that'll start to help build. And then there's a lot of things that happen that you just got to go through. Like there's a time with my nephews, and I tell them, I was like, yeah, I can bail you out. Yeah, I can give you the money, but I think you need to struggle through this because you're going to have an appreciation for it on the other side, right? And so because I didn't have that choice, right? So once I got to the other side, I appreciated it because I got there because I had to get myself there, right? I didn't have my nephews, are and nieces, they have myself, my brother, another aunt, to help them get to the other side. But we don't let them use that as a crutch, right? But so there's some things that you just gonna have to struggle through, and that builds you up for the next thing that you have to go through. But if you never get through anything, then everything that happens is just going to continuously seem like it's the worst thing in the world, right? You got to deal with one thing at a time, and that helps you because that one thing that you have control, that you have some things that you can control to get the desired outcome. That helps you deal with the thing that you have no control over, and you just have to wait for the outcome to be what it is so that you can deal with that, right? But it's all about just departmentalizing everything because that's the only way you're going to be able to get over what's going to happen because unless you just stop living, and go up under a rock, like life comes at you in waves.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that. Any other words of wisdom you would like to share with us?
Um, words of wisdom. Well, I would say this. The one thing that I try to that really helped me, and the great advice that I was given was chase skills and opportunities will chase you once you have those a plethora of skills. So that's my words of wisdom. Get as much skills in different areas, be a good team player, have leadership skills, be analytical, be quantitative, be creative, have a large vocabulary, read a lot of books, have a lot of understanding of a lot of different things, so that when you reach in your toolkit, you have whatever tool is needed to be successful. And then once your toolkit is filled with a bunch of skills, then opportunities will start to chase you down, and you don't have to keep chasing opportunities.
Very, very wise words. Thank you. Well, thank you so much, Tim. We appreciate sharing your story, your history, your words of wisdom for our youth at Fremont and South Central LA as a whole. We really appreciate your time. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. It's an honor that you've chosen me, and I hope it's helpful for the youth.
It will. Thank you so much.